Representative Luanne van Werven, who has been holding office for some years in the 42nd District, and it's position 1, I believe.
Yes, position 1.
And Luanne, she's always educating me about politics, and I would like you to take the mic and do your thing.
Well, that's saying something, Mark, because you've been my mentor. Not everything rubbed off on me, I want you to know. So, as you know, I'm Luanne van Werven, State Representative for the 42nd District, which is right here where we live, and I just live a couple miles up the Hannigan, and it has been my honor to serve as your state representative for the last 6 years, sorry. And I'm running for re-election for another 2 years. And I've been able to accomplish a lot in Olympia, despite the fact that we've had complete Democrat control. Although there were a couple of years where the Senate Republicans were in control, and we were able to accomplish very important things like freezing college tuition and some other really good things, holding off on some of the taxes. Now you know and you feel in your pocketbooks how much the Democrats have raised our taxes over the last years, and they have just gone crazy with taxes. And I talked to someone the other day who saw a list of 20 new tax proposals by the Democrats when we go back to Olympia. We should not be raising taxes on our hardworking families, hurting already, and businesses because of this COVID shutdown. It is time to give money back to the people, and I am preparing legislation to give tax breaks to those tax incentives for those businesses who had to spend a whole lot of money to become COVID compliant. So those are some of the things that I'm working on, that I'm getting ready to go back to Olympia, because I'm going to win on November 3. And just as importantly, I want to serve with this lady who's sitting behind me, Jennifer Sefzik. Yeah. And she's going to take that seat back to a Republican man.
Our next speaker is a candidate for the 42nd District, position 2, Jennifer Sefzik. She has put her heart and soul into this campaign. She's raising a passel of kids. She has a large family and a lot on her plate, and she elected to go ahead and pursue the seat. It takes courage, stamina, and a great deal of honor to seek a seat in Whatcom County and in the state of Washington as a Republican. I want all of you to know it is not a decision either made lightly or by the weak.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me just to say hello this morning. It was wonderful to be with many of you. How many of you were in Bellingham on the steps with us this morning? Yes, we had a wonderful morning. And so I am very honored to be running with Luanne, and I look forward to serving with her. And I want to say thank you for helping us win the primary. So you guys did it, you showed up, you voted, and we had over 50% of the vote. I want you to know what a big accomplishment that was for us. An incumbent Democrat has not been beaten in Washington State since 2014. So you guys did it. We had 62% turnout in the county, so that bodes well for us, but we have to continue to press on. We need everybody to turn out in the county to make up for that, that blue part that's south of us, and we can do it. You have to be more than just a vote, though. We have to be involved. We have to be engaged. We have to share our views and encourage people to get those ballots in early. We can win. For some reason, people think their vote doesn't count or it doesn't matter. We had 14,000 conservatives that didn't vote in the last election. We're here. We just have to show up and get our ballots turned in. So we can do this. I appreciate your support. Thank you for all the signs that you put out all over the county with my name on it. It's really weird to drive around and see your name. thing, and people recognize me, like when I go through a drive-through. It's like, I'm a big this, I'm living in somebody else's life right now. You know what that looks like. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. I'm excited. I thank the Lord for the energy to do this. I'm so thankful for the grassroots support, for the prayers, and we'll press on. I'm out there doorbelling, meeting people. I doorbelled between the events this morning. Met about a dozen people, even in the rain. You get a little sympathy vote, I think, when you go out in the rain. People say, oh, wow. But anyway, I'm excited and love this part of it, meeting people and being with you, and I look forward to serving you in Olympia. Thank you.
One of the frequent messages that we are going to be stating here during this hour or two that we're together is that this is the most important election of your lifetime. You guys, everyone in here knows that. We all know why we're here, and we are preaching to the choir. The problem is that even choirs need to be bucked up by a choir master once in a while. Because it gets old knowing that you're the choir, but no one's really listening other than the ones that are already in the church. So what I'm going to encourage all of you to do is to take a fresh perspective, have some introspection. Why is this important to you? To be involved in politics, one, especially in Whatcom County and the state of Washington, because I've been doing this since I was about 5 or 6 years old, arguing with my old man. And I've argued politics since I was 11, at school, everywhere. My point is, when you argue politics, you find out there's a lot of different perspectives. But at no time in my life have I ever realized, nor known a time, when there was such inseparable pride in refusing to listen to any form of reason at all. I've had so many people that I've discussed politics with recently, especially in downtown Bellingham, that just walk away as soon as they're confronted with an argument that seems difficult. And that is very frustrating. So listen well today, and hopefully if you know of one of these people, take the time to get to know them as a person, and then try and change their mind. Because you certainly won't get to change their mind if you don't get to know them as a person. And remember, not everyone on the other side is either evil or stupid. Most of the people on the other side are not that way. Those are the ones we must reach, no matter how difficult it is for us to retain our patience. And now I would like to call the chair of the Whatcom, Skagit, Eyman County areas for the Trump campaign. Without further ado, Phil Stockton, will you say a few words?
Hey, hey. Well, thank you very much for letting me speak today. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Trump's victory team is doing here in the area. What a lot of people don't understand is it takes a lot of work to run a campaign, to make sure people like Jennifer and Luanne are elected. And that hard work is talking to voters. And the Trump campaign has a unique way of approaching this. They don't always go out directly to door or call voters and say, hey, I'm with the Trump campaign, I want you to vote for Trump. We all kind of know a lot of people have their own opinions of Trump, either good or bad at this point. But Trump and his campaign knows that if we work at the grassroots level to help Luanne and Jennifer get elected, most likely if they change their mind and vote for these two, they may vote for Trump as well. And that's the best way we can get the vote turned out here for Trump and for all of our elected officials. Like Jennifer had mentioned, 14,000 Republicans in Whatcom County alone didn't vote in 2018. We know this based on all of our data, that these are conservative voters. So that's 14,000 voters that would vote our way that we need to talk to. There's, like Mark had said, there are people who will listen to you, who will have that conversation, but we have to reach them. most of the time people talk to people who have the same political beliefs or ideas as them, same religion. So we don't always come across people who are lefty or liberal. And that's what we do. We go door to door. We call these people. We have at least 3 or 4 Democrats each week that say they're going to vote Republicans because we had that conversation. We told them what's going on. People don't always know what's going on. So if you would like to help with this, come talk with me, come talk with Larry Helm over there, Jennifer, or Luanne, and we'll get you set up. We're out there almost every day up here in Whatcom County, and we make calls every day. So, you know, it takes a lot of work, and we need your help. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
The other side has an agenda. We often don't read about it. I received a card in the mail. Anyone that wants to come up and look at it may. It's from the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. I happen to be a member. I'm a member of the Democratic Senate Committee, too. I'm also a member of Nancy Pelosi's committee. I'm a member of so many committees, you just have no idea how much mail I get. And it's from that mail that I gain and become knowledgeable of what my opponents wish. Thank you for joining the ACLU. This is addressed to you. Your commitment to freedom and fairness keeps us going. There's immense power in our solidarity, more now than ever before in our 100 years. They use the term solidarity. That way they can tip off the person that's receiving the card. If they are communists, they'll feel comfortable. With your support, we protected millions of people across the country, suing to hold Seattle police accountable to excessive force, advocating for the release of inmates at high risk for COVID-19, reuniting families torn apart by the Trump administration's deportation agenda, staving off abortion bans in several states, and fighting for everyone's right to vote by mail nationwide. To give just a few examples of what we're for. While we might not win every battle, you can count on the ACLU to show up every day to fight. Larry? Well, I'm speaking, you don't. Show up every day to fight for the rights of everyone in this state and everywhere. I'm glad we're on this together. Make no bones about it. These people have an agenda, and it is nationwide vote by mail, which means there's no control of any type or authentication. Don't kid yourself that if they start equivocating on these issues, that's BS. They're telling their followers exactly what they stand for and exactly why. There's no secret. There's no equivocation. There's no maybe. Speaking of that, maybe we should have Larry Helms come up and say a few words.
He's already said a few.
Larry Helms. Larry Helms is a Northwest Regional Coordinator, and I have the minutes right here that I put this down. State Committee, Whatcom County Republican Party, Northwest Representative for the Whatcom County Republican Party, 40th Legislative Delegate for something or other, Whatcom County Republican Party. Is there any other titles you want? I think that's the most pretentious opening I've ever given anyone.
I'm not up there to joke. I just want to make a few comments. As one of your local county officers, we're very frustrated about, you keep hearing about those 14,000 Republicans that don't vote. I want you to know we have a major phone calling program called Red Dialer. We train people on Thursday at the GOP office on Bakerview from 1 to 5. You do Red Dialer. Once you get trained, you can go home and call on your phone at your leisure. Phil and his staff are doing the training. It's working. We've reduced that 14,000 number down to about probably less than 8,000. And we're picking up independents that are on our side. You know, he's talking about arguing with people. We're not arguing with people. We're just talking to people that we know that are on our side that don't vote. If we get those people to all vote, we don't have to talk to a lot of Democrats that don't want to talk to us. And you all need to do that. Every single one of us needs to be out talking to our relatives and our neighbors. And I don't know what else to say. I have one other comment that you all need to know about. I called my USSA insurance agent the other day because my homeowner's insurance is due. and we were chatting. I've known the guy a long time. I said, who's going to pay for all these rights? And he was real quiet. He goes, you are. Okay, every one of us are going to pay for those rights. And he told me that there's a big discussion in the insurance industry between whether the blue states pay more than the red states. Okay? Call your representative. We got to put a stop to these riots because it's coming out of our pocketbook. And I'm not even going to get into what's happening to all the landlords in the county about the renters aren't paying their rent. I used to have renters. Renters can't come up for 3 or 4 months rent. That's what's going to happen with all these renters. So it's going to be real interesting around here when that ends. So thanks for the time, Mark.
Larry Helm has given his time and his family's time and his farm time for the cause of good government for as many years as I've known him, which is, I think, a long time. A lot longer than either of us would wish to recognize.
22 years.
22 years. So he's a relative newcomer. What I want to say is that if you have a chance to talk to somebody, if you become doubtful about what you're doing or why you're doing it, talk to Larry Helm. Because on occasion, even all of us get depressed at times and want to throw the towel in. Larry Helm is one guy that doesn't know the meaning of the term stop or give up. And that's what we need and must have in this fight. I would now like to call Mr. Beeler, Mr. Jeff Beeler. Now do something really spontaneous and great.
So, thank you guys for coming. We got till like 4, he said, right? So, he said I had the majority of the time, so I appreciate you. Donuts are going to be served outside. Right, Mark?
Keep it up, you're wasting time.
I'm sorry.
And I am counting. So you've got.
I love Mark. This is great. I have never met Mark before, or if it was something, in another life, but this is a great guy. I appreciate everything. In politics, we have to have fun sometimes, because sometimes it gets too serious, and we get too caught up in what we're getting involved with. I know it means what our future's about, but at the same time, we have to put a smile on our face and thank God that He's given us this life for living here on this earth. So, back at the primary, one of the things that happened here in Whatcom County that I am most proud of is I got 50% of the vote. You guys came out and voted for me. Even a better number is that my opponent only got 40% of the vote. So that's contested. So that translates to 60+%. Okay? Why is that important? Because across the primary, I'm running for Congress here in District 1. Just my name is Jeffrey Beeler. He didn't announce everything, but I'm running for Congress. I want to be your next congressman. I want to be your representative because you guys have not been represented over the last 8 years she's been in office. She keeps talking about being bipartisan and talking about reaching across the aisle, but she has done very little of that. Unless it's something about everything that the fluff is what I was told. If it's fluffy stuff, yeah, she reaches across the aisle. But it's the important things that we need to accomplish here in Congress that she does not reach across the aisle. She's been a rubber stamp. In fact, this year alone, she has voted 100% behind Speaker Pelosi. Is that bipartisan? No, that's definitely not bipartisan. So we need to change that dynamic. We've got a Supreme Court justice that had just passed away. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a tremendous woman. She broke a lot of glass ceilings, being the second woman to be the Supreme Court justice. She broke a lot of barriers as what she did as she was moving through her life. And she committed her life to making the United States better. Now, she passed away. And so I say to the Lord, thank you for taking her and giving her peace. At the same time, I say it's time to replace that open seat with somebody who will fulfill the obligation that we have and the morals and the values that we represent. And that's why I say President Trump is doing the right thing. In 2016, your representative said when Justice Scalia passed away, the Congress should do as the Senate is obligated to replace and fill that seat. But right now she's out there saying, hold on, we need to wait for the election to happen because why? It doesn't fit her politics. And that's my job as a representative, is to go out and not only represent you, but to represent the whole country, or this whole district in this country, regardless of what the politics are in. Back in 16, I was supportive of the fact that that seat needed to be filled with the right justice. That's the important part. And that's what we're doing this time. President Trump has just nominated Amy. Exactly. So now it's the Senate's job to vote her in. And I say, doggone it, go to the floor and have a vote. Don't let her life get destroyed like they did to Kavanaugh. That's disgusting what they've done. And that's what the Democrats are about. They're about tearing things down and destroying relationships, not building unity and not bringing our country together. They talk about how Trump is trying to tear us apart. No, he's not. He's trying to make America better. Just think if we've got a Congress, not just the Senate, but also the House, that falls behind this president and his ideas. Where could we be? So much further along than where we are now. And that's what I am going back to. I want to represent each one of you. I want to represent the values that we have. And I want to take and put America first. That's another thing that has gone on during her 8 years, or 4 terms in Congress. She has backed policies that have literally stripped thousands of jobs away from Americans. First of all, she is on the aluminum caucus. And we just lost 700 jobs in this county because she did nothing. And she blames who? She blames President Trump because he's done it. Well, she's been there for 8 years. And aluminum has been imported in higher amounts every single year she's been in Congress. So the last 4 years, maybe there's been a little bit of a stalemate, but the previous 4 years, she could have done a heck of a lot more. And she claims it's all President Trump's fault. That's the type of person that we have in Congress. She's all about herself, her party, and rubber stamping everything they're doing. We need to make a change. Here's something I'm also proud about. Just think about 4 years of President Trump replacing how many Supreme Court justices? 2, right? Going on 3, right? Just think if we have 4 more years. We've got 2 other justices there that are pretty low, pretty close to getting to retirement, or, their health may not be as good. 5 Supreme Court justices in 1 president. Think of how that would change this country. That's an amazing thing. As well as the fact that he has put and appointed 300 other judges into positions across the country in 4 years. The most, I think, of any president to this point. And he's going to do that in another 4 years. That's 600 judges. But it takes every single one of us in this room, every single one of us, to get out there and say, we are voting for Trump because he stands behind our values. Yeah. We stand behind Jennifer Sefzik because she stands behind her values. We want to re-elect Luanne because she stands behind her values. And Doug Erickson, he's been there standing behind our values. And I want to go back to D.C., and I want to stand behind your values. So please, stand up for us all. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, it's time to get out there and get us elected. Do everything you possibly can. Knock on doors, red dialer, whatever it takes. And I'm going to beg of you, I'm going up against a multi-millionaire. She will throw millions at me in the next few weeks because she knows that I'm going to win. So I need your help financially too. Every dollar I can give. I'm a businessman. I know how to use my dollars wisely, but it's going to take money. So guys, let's get together. Let's do this. Let's make America great again, like those hats say. And let's keep moving on forward and moving this country to prosperous nations. All right? Thank you, guys.
If you're involved in politics, one of the things you think about doing is running for Congress. I have thought about running in the district I live in for years, but I never took the action. Family always got in the way, business always got in the way, politics got in the way, because if you have too much of a track record in politics, running for office can be very injurious, because people know who you are. Sometimes that's an advantage, sometimes it's not. Mr. Beeler stepped up on a race that anyone with any brains would have said is a done deal. Del Benny's been there a long time. Del Benny is entrenched. there's every reason not to run against Adele Bennett, which is precisely why she has to be removed from office. Because she is entrenched. She does not represent our values and doesn't intend to. It's not a surprise. We are very fortunate to have a quality candidate. How many of you have driven up and down I-5 in the last month? How many have seen Beeler signs? How many have seen Del Benny signs? That's because your eyes are closed. They're there. There's not very many of them, which is kind of interesting. Her signage is not dominant at all. Now, maybe she doesn't feel it's necessary because everyone knows her. She doesn't realize that voters turn over a lot. Voters turn over a lot. They move, and they're not familiar with who is. So I just hope that Beeler gets everyone that's moved into this district in the last 2 years that don't know Del Benny from Adams off Fox. That alone will help. But talk to your neighbors. That's the point that Mr. Beeler is making and we all must make. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to the family members that haven't voted or haven't voted always. This is the election. We're now going to go to the gentleman that will represent our candidate, Governor Lauren Culp, Tim Eyman. It is a privilege to have you here, Tim. It is always a privilege to be around you. You're so dynamic. It is always a privilege to be in your presence. It is always a privilege for we minions to be close to you. Tim Eyman.
Hey, well, thanks everybody for coming out. Let's hear it for Lord Culp. But let's just be fair. Let's hear from all the pro-Inslee people in the room.
I think we're at the right rally.
That's right. That's exactly where we're at. What are some words that you think of when you think of the name Jay Inslee? Throw them out. What words? Riley, what word do you think of when you think of our governor?
I think he is a snake. Wait, but that might be a little offensive to snakes.
So true. I'm going to throw out some ages. This is Riley, by the way. Can we hear it for Riley? The job of every parent is to embarrass their children. I do it very effectively. I'm going to throw out some ages, and I want you to guess at her age. How many of you think she's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16? Riley, how old are you?
I'm 12 years old.
It is such an honor to be able to travel our state doing what I love to do with a woman that I absolutely adore, but we are here promoting Lauren Culp. Of course, the challenge that we always have when it comes to Jay Inslee is trying to figure out what is that thing that pisses us off the most about the guy. Because there's just so many things that he does that is just darn stupid. And I don't know, I can't seem to think of something that he's done recently that just shows that level of stupidity that we have. These are maggot-free, by the way. They're more expensive. Oh, that one's still good. That one's still good. Throw that one in there. But seriously, I mean, I was born and raised in Yakima. That's apple country. And we do things maybe different over there in Yakima. We don't give maggot-infested apples to people. It's not well received. So Inslee doesn't know that. But there's so many other things about Jay Inslee that is just infuriating. If you remember 8 years ago, he said, I promise I will never raise your taxes. I'll in fact veto any tax increases.
And here we are now.
And here we are now. It's been 8 years, and he raised taxes 33 times. 33. And how much of those tax increases cost the taxpayers? $52.1 billion. $52.1 billion is what it cost us for him lying to us. And he is now saying, as he's running for re-election, that, you know what, tax increases won't be my priority. It won't be my priority. So let's just say that's a loophole-ridden statement by a lawyer that says it's not my priority. For 33 times, he didn't veto a single tax increase, raised them $52.1 billion. Now, he ran for president, if we all remember that. It took $5 million of taxpayer money. And after $5 million and 6 months, we learned that how many percentage of the Democrats wanted to be president? Zero. Goose egg. Big goose egg. I don't think it should take $5 million to figure out that we didn't want him to be president, but that's what he did. But what really is hard to not take personally is our $30 tabs. Yes. $30 tabs. Now, we had an election last November, and we voted for the initiative, and we'll talk about that for a little bit, but shortly after the election, he ended up blocking that from taking effect. So we don't have $30 tabs. Riley, what did he say was the reason we're blocking it?
He said the voters were confused.
Riley, what does the $30 tabs initiative do?
It gives the voters $30 car tabs.
My 12-year-old daughter is smarter than our governor.
Well, that is a low bar to clear.
It is a very low bar to clear. That is absolutely true. But think about that. He said voters were confused by an initiative about a dollar amount. I mean, it's not 31, it's not 29. Jay, it's that number in the middle. That's the one. So the thing that I love about Lauren Culp is that if we vote for him in November, we will get our $30 tabs. We are so lucky to have Lauren Culp on the November ballot. One of the things that I really admire about Lauren Culp is his work ethic. I mean, he worked really hard prior to the primary, doing rallies all throughout the state. And what I'm really impressed with is he just kicked my butt. He just kicked the crap out of it. And I admire that. I want a winner. I want the guy that's going to kick Inslee's butt in November. Yeah! But I do have to circle back to $30 tabs, because this is deeply personal to Riley and I. For 2 years, by the way, these things aren't going to eat themselves. Come on, somebody throw it out there. There you go. Maggot-free, people. They're all maggot-free. That's the way we do it. One more with feeling. Come on, you got it this time. I'm like blowing it. I don't know why I think that's funny. I just do, because it makes Inslee look even stupider. So maggots to the masses. I love it. So $30 tabs. Riley and I, for 2 years, worked on this initiative together. We went to rallies together, we went to all these fairs together, and we were collecting signatures. And I remember on election night, incredibly special night, she's standing next to me, as she is right now, and we're don't know the outcome of the election yet. And I took her aside, and I said, Riley, the universe wouldn't be the way it would need to be unless you were here with me. Because Bob Ferguson is suing me and seeking a lifetime ban on my future political activity. And so I told her, this may end up being the last initiative I'm ever able to do. And without hesitation, after I said this moving statement, she said,
I'll carry it on.
So I quickly reminded her that she was 12. And that she still needed to go to Wazoo, and she was going to get her degree from there. But again, without hesitation, without pause, her response to that was,
I'll do it after.
it was really incredible. So here she is, we're next to each other when we find out the outcome of the election. We get the results. And it was really amazing. And so the press threw out the number, you're gonna win, 53-47. I'm a little dumbstruck, and she whispers to me something.
Arms up.
Arms up. I have no idea what she's saying, but she reaches over, grabs my hand, and we go like this. Now, what she did was a media stunt. She did a media stunt, and every newspaper showed a picture of the two of us with arms up through this thing. So I've been an activist for 22 years in the state of Washington. She's seen me to do some goofy, weird things for 12 years of her life, and here she was on her own, doing her own media stunt. A father has never been more proud. So let's just say the Eyman name will carry on well past me in the political arena. But it really was just a couple days later, after we have this amazing victory, the voters overwhelmingly voting for this initiative, Jay Inslee said the voters were confused, and that's why he blocked it. So everybody who walks up to me and says, why aren't my tabs $30? Eyman, where's our $30 tabs initiative? Eyman, why aren't my tabs $30? Eyman, what's wrong with my $30 tabs? Why isn't it 30? Who do we have to blame for that?
Jay Inslee.
Jay Inslee. So it's very, very important for all of us to know that all you have to do to get $30 tabs is simply vote for it one more time. And you're voting for $30 tabs in November by voting for Lauren Culp. Another thing I really admire about Lauren Culp, it's very impressive. Never in the entire time that he was the police chief of Republic did he ever send $1 billion to Nigeria. Never happened. Didn't happen during his entire reign. It's amazing that Inslee sets the bar that low. That's an amazing accomplishment for him. So as they throw crap at Lauren Culp, a very good man, a veteran, somebody who served our country, when they throw crap at him, always remember that we can always say, at least he didn't send $1 billion to Nigeria. We will always have that in our back pocket at all times. But the other thing that I think we should all be very excited about Lauren Culp is, as governor, he will open up the state of Washington again. Is insane. It is just insane. And with Inslee as our governor, every day is an adventure. Every new press conference is new rules. We get to find out new rules in the state of Washington that may only be good for that one day, but until the next press conference. My favorite was, of course, when he banned fishing and hunting in the state of Washington. You guys remember that at all? We have 50 states in the Union, with one governor moronic enough to actually ban fishing and hunting in their state. Only Washington State did this. And I still remember how specific the rules were. He said, if you're sitting in a rowboat in the middle of a lake, alone with a hook in the water, COVID will attack you. But if you're in that rowboat, middle of the lake, alone, no hook in the water, you are safe. Riley, what time does COVID actually come out at bars?
10 p.m.
10 p.m., COVID comes out.
9:59 you're safe, and then 10:01 it attacks.
It is literally that smart of a virus that it's able to discern the time of day, whether or not you're sitting or standing, because if you're walking to your table, you have to mask up, but once you sit down, you're safe, because COVID knows that you're sitting right there. It also knows your political ideology. which is very impressive. One of the smartest IQs of any virus ever. Because if you're a rioter in Seattle, you are not susceptible to COVID. You do not have to wear a mask. You're fine. But if you're at a Lauren Culp rally, they will bust your balls if you're not wearing a mask. And you will see that in every news story the following day. Never see it in a rioter story, but you always get it in a Lauren Culp rally. Amazing under Jay Inslee, the cleverness that you have with this virus. Now, under Lauren Culp, he understands this basic rule, that you need to have safety, but you have to have liberty, and you have to have a strong economy. You have to have all three legs of that stool. And under Lauren Culp, you will have all three. He will keep us safe, but he will also guard our liberty, and he will keep this economy going, because you need to have all three in order to have a successful state.
Here, here.
And all around us, we have states that are illustrating exactly how stupid Inslee really is. You have Idaho, opened up. We just heard about Florida opening up. The South Dakota governor never shut down her state at all. And what she found was better compliance, better outcomes, and better safety, because she treated their citizens as adults. Amazing how that works. What happens when you have an arrogant, stupid governor that treats you like a child and says that you're heartless and selfish because you're only looking out for yourself when you try and open your small business? And all you're doing is saying, I see Walmart, I see Boeing, I see Amazon. If all the big corporations that just happen to be in Jay Inslee's stock portfolio are all able to open up, why can't small businesses do so as well? So let me just close with this, and I think it's very, very important. We're all here. It's a beautiful Saturday. We're all out. Let's just say we're not really that normal. We're like activists. We're all intense. We all support. How many people are voting for Lauren Culp in November? Another maggot-free apple for the young lady right here. Don't get hit in the face. I'll get sued. Somebody's going to throw something at me. Maggot-free again. But it's very, very important that we need to go out and get the normal people, all the regular people that aren't at a Lauren Culp rally, to come on board and join the Lauren Culp train the way Riley and I have. And that means email. That means Facebook. That means doing everything you can to be able to promote it. The thing that I really admire about Lauren Culp, he knows it's not just about him. He's building a tremendous team of people that are all working really, really hard. Chris Gergen is campaign manager, all the people that we've met that have welcomed us into the campaign. But there's this one person on his team is really extraordinary. Every single day, this guy wakes up and comes up with new ideas that makes us want to vote for Lauren Culp even more. What is the name of that supporter again, Riley?
Jay Inslee.
I can visualize the bumper stickers. Lauren Culp, he's not Jay Inslee. That might be enough for a lot of people. Just remind them, he's not Jay Inslee. He didn't send $1 billion to Nigeria. He did not raise your taxes 33 times, $52.1 billion. He will respect your $30 tabs. He will open up the state of Washington. He will bring back laughter and smiling and fun and enjoyment. And I don't know if you've seen the new rules on weddings now that Inslee recently put out, micromanaging how long you can dance with the bride, how many people are allowed, how long the event may last, but a Ruth Bader Ginsburg funeral can last for days. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Lauren Culp believes we are all essential.
But we know Inslee is non-essential.
I still remember one of these rallies, there's a plane flying up ahead, and it said, Inslee is non-essential on the banner behind it. It just cracked me up, I loved it. But as an aside though, there were these bumper stickers that I saw that says, "My governor is an idiot." My governor is an idiot. And as I was running for governor, this young lady made an observation about that bumper sticker.
If my dad wins, it would still be true.
Let's just say she keeps me humble. She keeps me humble. So I really want to encourage everybody. I got to do some more maggot-free apples. I'm going to go farther distance. I want to see who can really get one. I want to see one guy in the back. You! Nice one! Nice one! It'll make the news if somebody gets hurt. Nice catch! Nice catch. No, I really want to say thank you very much for coming out tonight. It's just tremendous fun for me. The Lauren Culp campaign could not have been more welcoming to us. We asked, is it possible for us to join the Culp train? And we are on the Culp team. And we're just honored to be able to go to these various events. We get to introduce them. And one of the things that I love about Riley, there was this one time I had to leave. And she had this private time with Lauren. And I come back, and she tells me later, "Do you remember what you said?" Just embarrassing. She goes, "I really like him. He's really, really nice. He talked to me like a normal person. That is just really fantastic." I just thought to myself, thank God, she didn't know him before she knew me, or else it would have thrown me over the bridge. But she did. And I've seen that. Lauren Culp, one-on-one with people, is amazing. Every rally that you go to, he's the last person to leave. He will talk with everybody. I think that we're really lucky to be able to have him on the November ballot. He's really generated some tremendous excitement. We have a really, really good, amazing team of people, including the unofficial campaign manager, Jay Inslee himself, working every day to get Lauren Culp elected. Every person that's excited about Lauren Culp is going to be very excited about this team we also have on the ballot. We're trying to get everybody involved, so do everything you can to be able to help with the campaign. We are so grateful for this time and your indulgence with a little extra time, a little dad-daughter time. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you all very much.
Easiest to follow up after Tim Eyman's speech. All seriousness, I got to know Tim around the campaign trail. He's great, and it's awesome to see that we have an heir to Tim Eyman. So that's fantastic. Anyway, my name's Peyton. I'm campaign manager for Matt Larken. He's running for Attorney General. We got the plurality of Republican voters in Whatcom, but there is still a discrepancy between where we are at now, including the other Republican support we did not get, and where we need to be. Whatcom is a large county, and it will be key for us to perform well in Whatcom County. So, so anyway, just a quick background about Matt before I get into what he's running on and why he's running. He's a lifelong Washingtonian, went to law school at Gonzaga, got his Master of Law from George Washington University, and he worked in the White House for President George W. Bush as an attorney and a speechwriter. He made his way back to Washington. We prosecuted him for the last 10 years. He's been living in Woodinville with his wife and 4 kids, and he's been working as chief legal counsel at his family's third-generation manufacturing company, chief legal counsel and owner. So obviously there's not much there's no elected experience there. Matt's never ran before. He is, he's not a career politician. He has, and he felt a calling. He's a man of faith, and he felt that he was called to run for this office because our current Attorney General has been, in nice words, just a complete letdown. And this Washington is, it's not the same Washington that he grew up in. And that's saying something. He's a pretty young guy. He's only 39 years old. And this state is completely unrecognizable to him. And he wants his kids, when they grow up and they're his age, and just through their childhood, their vision, their outlook on life is being shaped right now. And with their surroundings, what's been going on in Washington, it's unacceptable. We live in a very, very beautiful state, but the policy is not parallel with how beautiful our state is. Just some quick statistics that kind of paint a picture of exactly where we're at here in Washington under the rule of Bob Ferguson and Jay Inslee. I don't really need to touch on Inslee because Mr. Eyman did a really good job there. But since Bob Ferguson has been elected, there has been near a 2,000%, and I'm not misspeaking, near a 2,000% increase in the frequency of sex trafficking cases. There has been a 300% increase in fatalities of officers in the line of duty. Rape is up 68%. Murder is up over 45%. The homeless problem is not getting any better. You can barely walk down the street anymore without seeing somebody defecating in a trash can or shooting up heroin. And it's a dark tone, but that's just the reality of the situation. And our Attorney General is silent. He is completely silent on all of these issues. He's not going to bring any of it up because he knows it falls back on him as Chief Legal Officer of the state. So what we've been experiencing here is absolutely unacceptable, and we must hold our leaders accountable in that regard. I don't think the common sense response to a 2,000% increase in sex trafficking, that is the number. It's taken from the sheriff's guild in Washington. That is the number, almost 2,000%, and that's terrifying. Washington, specifically Seattle, as it is a port city, and we have a border with Canada, has become one of the sex trafficking hotspots in the entire United States. And that's a really bad thing. And the response to that by Seattle politicians is to defund the police.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unacceptable. So, sorry about that. But that's what Matt's running on. Matt's running not because he wants to make his career in politics. He's had a great career. He could continue along with that. He's doing well, but he really felt a true calling. He prayed for months before he decided to ultimately get in this race last November. And this is where he feels he can have the most impact and where he feels he can do the most good. He's endorsed by 10 county sheriffs around the state. Ever since he got in, he's been running on being a voice for law enforcement and supporting them. And that was last November. It was obviously an issue. These issues have been festering, but it's gotten worse. We saw how extreme this summer has been with ultimately them defunding the police earlier this week. But we saw Chaz and Chop, and they send in police completely disarmed to try to defuse that situation. And the next thing they're going to do is they're going to be sending in social workers. I don't know if you guys saw the Seattle Times article. They recently hired a street czar for $150,000 a year to offer. He did used to be a pimp. I wasn't going to go there, but yeah, you're exactly right. And regardless of his history, he could be a former Nobel Prize winner for all I care. Street czar. What does that mean? Is that acceptable verbiage for somebody's title that is a government employee? His job, what he's doing, his job entails is offering alternative solutions to policing. He was one of the people that was the startups of Chaz and Chop, and I don't know. To me, that regardless if his position was named more appropriately, his background does not support it, and it's just embarrassing. We need solutions. We need a fresh perspective in the Office of Attorney General, and that's why I can't wait for on November 4th, we find out we win. And then when Matt is inaugurated, he can walk into the AG office, he can flip on the lights and expose the malpractice that's been going on for the last 8 years. He can call to action to every law enforcement officer in the state so they know that he has their back. He's not going to throw them under the bus. He's not going to be silent amidst efforts to defund them. And he is going to be a proponent of their continued protections of us as citizens. To put this into more perspective, the Seattle Police Department, the police guild that they're defunding, we We have the most progressive police department, Seattle, excuse me. Seattle is the most progressive police department in the entire country. So this isn't an issue of just a bunch of racist cops that are going out there and hunting minorities. That is absolutely absurd. So that's the perspective that we're dealing with here. It isn't about the conduct of the officers. It's about the fact that they're officers in general. And that is why Matt is running. Matt is running to restore safety. He's running to provide a better future for his kids. And he hopes that you guys can come on board, continue to spread the word about his candidacy, because this problem that we have in Washington, this crime problem, the fact that on the coast we're one of the hot spots for human trafficking in the entire country, probably the entire world. I haven't done that much research, but rape is up, murder is up, crime is up, homelessness is up, addiction is up. They're going to vote next week on legalizing safe heroin injection sites, and the fact that it was a 9-0 vote, I'm sorry if I'm going over, but the fact that it was a 9-0 vote when it came to defunding, I'm sorry about that. The fact that it was a 9-0 vote when it came to defunding the police is indicative of the fact that that is going to pass also. So we're going to have safe free heroin injection sites, and this is my call to action. I thank you. I apologize for going over, but again, thank you guys for allowing me to be here to speak today.
Peyton, I was going to call him up, and he was with the person I was going to call up, and you didn't give your last name. What?
My last name was LaFerlo.
LaFerlo.
LaFerlo. L-A, capital F-E-L.
Okay, please remain standing. It is a very difficult thing for everyone here to really realize that his opponent, Robert Ferguson, I believe is the gentleman. Robert Ferguson, we can go ahead and ignore the name if we wish. He is probably the most dangerous man in the state of Washington. Right. His policies, his philosophy is so inimical to the values of this nation and to the people that, as citizens, respect the law and the order that our Constitution, Bill of Rights, afford us. He is an absolute affront to everything we stand, and yet we remain silent. In news media, the Seattle Times, the Valley, it doesn't matter which newspaper, they will not call out Ferguson for what he is. And I want to thank you for representing the candidate that I hope will replace him desperately. We won't do it again. You may, but you will be called on when you do. We now have two more presentations. Now, I have not forgotten Doug. He's not here. That makes me very sad. I wanted Doug Erickson to be here. He's not here. I could speak for him. How many people know Doug Erickson, Senator Doug Erickson? He deserves our respect and our kindness. He has been an excellent senator, and I regret that he is not here. He knew about the event, and he said he'd be here, but he also said he has a lot going on. For one thing, he's getting his daughters placed in colleges. He's either taking them to college or they're going to one. Our next speaker then is going to be, whose phone is that? Trump.
You think anybody's as good to it to you, Mark?
Everyone is. We have two more speeches. Mine is one, and so is Jim McKinney's. Jim McKinney has agreed to give a speech today that I know is going to need to be said, because it's going to be a summary of why we're here and what we must do in the next 30 days. This is the election of our lifetime, and I'm sure that Mr. McKinney will bring that point home. There's a reason we're having a National Day of Prayer all over this nation. There's a reason. Because if we don't have God gazing down upon him, you can wait until we're done, Luanne.
All right, Mark, some of us have old bones. How about a stand-up break?
Oh, of course. Anyone that wants to use the restroom, you want to take 3 minutes? Go ahead. Jim McKinney may not claim to be a friend, but that's all right. Jim McKinney is going to be our next speaker. He is a person that is leading up the National Day of Prayer, as he told you here locally in Whatcom County. But more than that, he's been in contact with the entire organization back in D.C. And he lends credence to the information we have out here because we don't really know what goes on. We see it on TV. It's not the same as having somebody that actually knows what's going on. So I'm going to count on Jim McKinney today to tell us what's really going on. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Mark. And I got to thank Peyton for talking after Tim, wherever Tim went, because that's a tough thing to do. So thank you for that. And I got to thank Mark for having everybody get a bathroom break so he wouldn't sit here and forget what I was talking about.
Are you going to sit down, Tim, or interrupt him too?
No.
Why don't you just take a seat, Tim?
Testing his
And be a good person.
Testing his concentration.
When Tony sits down, there's no sense. He's got to be the center. Go ahead.
That's right. We love it.
Toilet paper? Oh, no. That's
For the maggot ones, actually. How many are walkaways? How many are walkaways? Raise your hand. Give them a hand. People are waking up.
What's a walk?
Walk away from the Democratic Party. Yeah, hashtag walk away. There's a big movement in America right now. People are waking up to the progressive attacks on America. And if you're an American and you've lived here, you understand the value of this country, right? And you understand that you are responsible for yourself. Everybody else isn't responsible for you. And that's the big difference in this room, and which is so exciting to me to see. Pat's got a mask on because she is taking care of herself. And the rest of us don't. And that's why I know I'm in a Republican place right now. No face diaper. Right? Because we're going to take risks because we believe in responsibility to ourselves. And yeah, we don't want anybody else to be hurt. We don't want anybody else to. But bottom line is, everybody should not suffer to protect those that should be protecting themselves.
Here, here.
And that's just the way we should be looking at our world. We can help out. That's not because we don't have a big heart and we don't want to protect each other. That's not the case. But don't place rules and take away our rights because someone else thinks it's a better idea. We are now in the fight, the epic battle of our age. This is the epic battle of our age. Multiple generations, good versus evil, courage over fear, hope over hate. These are fundamental principles that we are now struggling with. And we, us, right here, the battle begins with us. Not since 1861, the last time the Democratic Party divided this nation over race, have we faced such challenges on a national scale. And oh, by the way, 600,000 Americans died over that battle. I'm a soldier. I do not want to fight a civil war in my nation. We need to vote our way in a peaceful way to give each other our freedoms and our rights.
Yeah.
And we are facing a challenge that is not understood by the politicians that live inside Olympia, except for the ones up here, that is not understood by the people inside the Beltway. In 2004, I was at Command and General Staff College. And I was in what they call the big blue bedroom, 1,000 officers sitting in the room listening to professional speakers and former leaders or military generals that came in and spoke. The commander of U.S. Army Central, I won't name the name, non-attributional, was speaking in April of 2004. The battles the initial invasion of Iraq was over. There was actually some pretty stabilized moments at the time, but there had been rioting. Paul Bremer had disbanded the entire 400,000+ man Iraqi army. Fallujah had happened, where we had actually the first time had lost a battle. And then Abu Ghraib pictures came out. And I stood up in front of a room with 1,000 other officers and asked this general, what is your plan to deal with a growing insurgency? What is your plan? The man responsible for the army forces in that theater, what is your plan? Silence and then anger at me for asking the question. And the response, the first response was, what insurgency? There's no insurgency. Oh, by the way, we've got to hand it over to the Iraqis. What Iraqis? You just disbanded the entire security apparatus of that nation. Within a week, Donald Rumsfeld was asked a similar question on national television in a press conference, and his response was the same. What insurgency? I don't see an insurgency. For me, as a man who'd worked in special operations, had done counterterrorism, had been in counterinsurgency for a long time, it was clear. For the people inside the Beltway that were believing their own dialogue, believing what the Washington Post said, believing something that's just not right, they just didn't understand from the ground. It shouldn't work this way. Thousands of Americans, tens of thousands of Iraqis died for that failure to understand the insurgency. What was happening? Now I'm going to tell you something right now that is going to scare you a little bit. And it's a little more serious. I'm not going to be funny. FM 3-24, the U.S. Army's counterinsurgency manual. It's the same for the Marine Corps. They use the same document. It outlines what an urban insurgency is. In the first chapter, look it up. You can download the PDF. Intimidate the population. Undermine local government. Use sectarian violence to separate the population through tension and racial tension. Undermine credibility and authority. Isolate, fix security forces, police and military, so they are unable to act. Undermine the legitimacy of government. And the final is kill your opposition. We're there. Washington, people that live inside that beltway, that read the Washington Post, New York Times every day to get information, they do not understand it. They don't see what is happening right now. There is a well-funded, well-resourced operational activity going on in our nation with big corporations and nefarious actors that are actually funding and resourcing these events in over 200 cities in the United States right now. It is the beginnings of an insurgency. And they do it through propaganda. They do it with the support of major, the most resourced, capitalized corporations in the history of the world. Our tech companies. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They are using those methodologies, and you are getting massive resources to support these activities with Antifa and BLM through an organization called Act Blue, which is funding the Democratic Party, and then corporate donations to these different front groups. They're coordinated, they're organized, and they're operating in our cities to destroy them and undermine exactly in that, those outlines in our counterinsurgency manual for our military. Who's doing it? People that want power and to buy influence. They hate this presidency so much because it is a direct affront to what they want. massive lobbyists, massive organizations that spend tremendous amounts influencing our political leaders in Washington and in our states. And the way the system works, like it or not, is the people with the money get the influence, they get the entree, they go in, they talk, they convince, and then they keep moving forward. And now, if you can use the media corporations, and if you can use the tech companies to support your message and shut out any opposition in order to influence and get power, that's what we're facing right now. And they are doing it. There is no question. It is absolutely apparent, except for the people that closed their minds to it because that couldn't be happening. The general in 2004, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld in 2004. That can't be happening. They don't see it. They don't understand. It happens so fast. In the bottom of that document, it says, often in an insurgency, the leadership does not know until it's already there. How do you get justice, social justice, by destroying the justice system? Someone explain that to me? How do you get justice by taking away law enforcement? You know, what is the most, how many law enforcement in here? Cliff, former law enforcement.
Raise your hand.
You're a former law enforcement. How many others former law enforcement? What is the most dangerous? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for what you've done and your support to our community. What's the most dangerous event to go on? Domestic violence issue. The biggest, most dangerous event. Like I was a cop for 30 plus years. Domestic violence. So we're going to send in social workers? What the heck? This is insane. These ideologies are absolutely undermining our safety, our communities, and our future. But they're winning. They're winning because they've got support, they've got the money. They've got the media, the propaganda, all the elements of an insurgency. How many people, last month, Joe Biden raised how much money? $345 million. The Trump campaign raised less than $100,000 less. What was the average donation? How many knows the average donation to the Biden campaign?
500,000.
So over 700,000. Average donation, over 700,000 to the Biden campaign in Acton. The average. What was the average donation to the Trump campaign? $45. Who do you think has the population on their side right now? But the fight is big because those dollar figures really want to have control and they want to buy influence with that administration. They want influence. Hillary Clinton in 2016 raised 4 times the money that the Trump administration did and lost the election. 4 times. Biggest donor to the Clinton campaign? Finance, exactly. Finance industry. How much money had she ever managed? Clinton Foundation, how much did she legally manage? Here's a guy that had actually made money. Yes, he started out with his family and had some money to start with, but he was the most popular guy. Oprah Winfrey wanted him on the show. He stood and got awards from Al Sharpton in New York. Everybody loved him. Everyone wanted to be associated with Donald Trump until 2015. Everybody thought he was a great guy. There were no complaints, there were no massages, because most of his staff were actually women. High-paid staff. How many in here were uncomfortable with Donald Trump in 2016? Honestly, raise your hands. So was I. I'm like, The Apprentice? What are you talking about? What? I didn't know him. He's in New York. Man, get away from that. I don't want that. But then I started watching, and I saw what he said. But then I started listening to what was happening. I was apolitical my entire career, 30 plus years in the military. I supported 6 presidents. until I retired. And then I realized my own community is suffering from these ideologies and these policies. I need to get involved. You're here because you want to get involved. Trump was not the ideal candidate. In one sense. And especially, and this is really important, for conservative Christian voters, they are very uncomfortable. And I'm going to say this, and this is what I would like you to pass on to your friends that say the same. Who judges us? As a Christian, who judges you? God judges you. When you go up there and you're trying to get through the gates with St. Pete, that's who makes the call. Do we have the responsibility to judge each other? We should be careful about that. We have to make good decisions. We have to make rational decisions, right? But why in the world would we undermine our future based on judging someone's character that we don't know? All we hear is the media and the spin that is controlled by people that want to manage our thoughts and ideas. We are now the product. Google, Facebook, these companies, they make their money off understanding exactly what you're going to look at, what you're going to buy, what you're going to see, what you're going to do. They build algorithms. Unfortunately, my son does this as a profession. AI manager, a scientist with Amazon. PhD, Caltech, theoretical physics. They build algorithms to judge you, to manage you, to shape you, to direct you, how to think, where to buy, what you're going to do next. And they sell that data to anybody, not just for advertising, including political campaigns, to shape your ideas, to undermine you. And then they shut down opposing views that would go against where they're going to make their money or their future. These are the people that are donating and managing and supporting the $700,000 plus donations to that campaign. I did not vote for Donald Trump because he was a nice guy. I voted for Donald Trump because he believed in America, because he wanted to take care of the workers of America, because he wanted to stop the export of our jobs, because he wanted to protect our borders, because he wanted to protect our nation, and believes fundamentally in those values of right to speak as you wish freely, to think and believe as you wish, to improve your family's life as you wish, by your choice, not by control in some central government that will dictate to you. And oh my God, he's a guy that's going to stand up to people that will scream at you at the restaurant and tell you to raise your hand and say Black Lives Matter, or don't eat, or burn your car, or attack you, or threaten you, and intimidate you. And he's appointing judges, and he's moving in the direction, and oh my God, is it a fight? This is unbelievable what we're facing. And I'm just going to close with another story. So, voter fraud. Do you know Republican and Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate authorize all our defense spending? 2 years ago, I'm in Afghanistan. We did a joint bipartisan money to provide biometric scanners for voting in Afghanistan to ensure that we don't have voter fraud. We fly helicopters to every little podunk village in conflict all through that country to give biometric scanners and ink. So when someone votes, they put their finger and they come out under threat of death or dismemberment by the Taliban if you vote. They have a different philosophy in life in Afghanistan. They don't have the same faith that we do, but they believe something bigger. They want that choice and that freedom. And they're willing to sacrifice to it, for it. on Election Day in October 20th in 2018, they're going to elect the entire new parliament. 50% of the population under threat of death goes out and votes. I'm watching a line of hundreds of people in Kabul going in to vote. A young man walks up towards the front of the line with hundreds of people lined up. Security forces say, that's weird, comes up and surround him, and he detonates a suicide vest. He kills 9 of the security forces and 10 of the people in line. 19 people dead. In order to stop them from voting. Pandemonium, mayhem everywhere. What did the people of Afghanistan do? They got back in line. They got back in line to vote. We need to get back in line. We need to have the courage. We need to stand up against these voices. We need to stand up against what's happening in this nation right now with our beliefs, our faith, and protecting our future, to protect those fundamental principles in our Constitution that makes us the place for the entire world, the envy and the desire to come to. And I've been all over, 60 plus countries, and you hear in the media that, oh man, America's terrible. Everybody. The Taliban wants to get exported to the U.S. Everybody would like to come here. This nation means something. We need to protect that. You need to walk out and feel confident that you are not alone, that you have the hope and the courage, that we will make this place better and we will turn it around. I am confident that this nation is waking up right now to what's been happening. You cannot successfully win an election by threatening. People are going to push back. Know that. Stand up. Tell your friends and your neighbors. When someone puts a Biden sign up in their yard, ask them, really? Are you kidding? And ask them why. All you have to do is ask questions. That's it. I am willing to fight. I do not want to fight. I've served all over. The Balkans, Middle East, Afghanistan, all through Central Asia, the Caucasus. I don't want to fight a civil war on my own. We can stop it by voting. We can stop it by being active. We can stop it by making this an overwhelming victory for freedom. An overwhelming victory for that flag and for this nation. Thanks.
This may be the last presentation I'll give in Whatcom County in the state of Washington. I plan to move, as many people are. My body's been torn up pretty bad by putting rocks in the river trying to save my land. And quite frankly, at almost 78 and another month, my body has told me that it's time to stop lifting concrete blocks and rocks and logs. And I did this trying to chop kindling so you can understand why I'm not considering it. But today I'm going to say some things that I've always wanted to say, and I was always afraid that people would run in abandonment. But I think now we've reached a time where I can actually give a speech I want to give really badly. Years ago in the 1600s, a guy by the name of Thomas Hobbes wrote a book called The Leviathan. The Leviathan was a book about man's nature. The same way that John Locke wrote a book, Second Treatise on Civil Government, that Jefferson had his picture up in Monticello. Most of you are probably familiar with the Second Treatise on Civil Government, in which he describes life, liberty, and property as the three mandates of man in order to be free and in order to love society and himself. But Thomas Hobbes believed that there was a consequence for a man that did not think, and a man that did not read, and a man that did not understand government and politics. Thomas Hobbes said, if you selected such a life, you would soon end up in a state of chaos, in a state of nature, where life is nasty, brutish, short, and solitary. It bothers me that when I see someone like Ferguson, when I see someone like Bill Benny, when I see someone like Larson, when I see Democrats seeming to be oblivious to what the state of nature is and what they're demonstrating for all of you, Seattle was nothing more than Thomas Hobbes coming to fruition in a society that refused to have a constitution and a reverence for a rule of law. Seattle is simply Thomas Hobbes showing you what happens to a nation that refuses to abide by its own social restraint, the rule of law demonstrated by a constitution. It's not complex. Pick one or the other. You can't have both. You can either have chaos in the home, in your village, in your town, in your city, in your county, your state, or your nation, or you can have a rule of law. We as citizens, under God with a covenant, have rights. I don't believe my rights derive from the state. Never have. I never will. My rights are derived from the Creator. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But first, let's remember that when we create government, this is the first premise that you have to get. When we create government, we willingly give government some of our power, not our rights. God gives us our natural rights and our natural law. God gives us that covenant with Him. We elect to render to government a small portion of power to bring what to us?
Security.
Security. What else? Order. Freedom. Yes, we can exercise our freedom as long as I don't push my hand further than his nose. Not that I didn't.
Thank you.
The point is, get that premise down in your right. We're not giving to government our rights. We're giving to government temporarily with a right reserved for revolution. Thomas Jefferson, not Martin Nelson. If anyone reads, they would realize that our forefathers believed in one sterling right above all: the right to rescind that power when government became oppressive. And that's what my presentation today is going to be about. Not yet. I'm starting. The title of my presentation is "We Are Warriors of Our Forefathers." What does that mean? Well, it means our nation was founded under conflict. It was the conflict between the French. When our settlers moved west out of the East Coast. Now we're going to talk today about the conflict we're facing in the state of Washington and throughout our country. The conflict that seems to be the East versus the flyover country. The blue versus the red. You know that Reagan's color was all blue. We were used to be all blue. And then they said every 10 years they'd change it back and forth. BS. Once the Democrats became blue, they never wanted to give it up again. So we were always red. Do you understand? We used to all be blue. It's hard for me because I'm not accustomed to red. So here's our point. Our nation's founders understood conflict. If they were going to be involved in government, you had to involve yourself in conflict, i.e., argument, debate, acrimony. Doesn't mean you're violent. It doesn't mean, as Mr. McKinney has so eloquently stated, it doesn't mean you resort to violence. As soon as you resort to violence, you have given up your covenant with God and you have given up your covenant with your state. That's fine to do, but you better damn well be careful when you do it and know what you're doing and why. The tree of liberty is definitely fertilized with the blood of patriots. And that blood of patriots should be very selective when you start fertilizing trees. There are French and Indian wars. The British were versus the American colonists. The American colonists were not happy with the British. There were alliances made among Indians. Many of our colonists sided with the Indians against the British. There were lots of coups taken on both sides. American colonists took coups. That means cutting off the tops of the hair. The formation of our nation's first constitution, however, gradually became called the Articles of Confederation. Now, our forefathers learned about a confederation from whom? That's right, the Indians. Who said that? That's exactly right, from the Indians. The Iroquois, to be more exact. The Iroquois who used the lakes of Lake Michigan and surrounding lakes as a methodology of commerce and trade. The Iroquois who managed to fashion 12, 15 tribes of different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages even. Do you know what? They managed to do that and forge those different tribes together in a confederation. That means that the tribes would punish their own if they got a hand. When you got a bunch of young, restless young men decided to go pick a fight on another tribe 30, 50 miles upriver, you know what they did? They punished them themselves. They allowed that to happen because they would have a meeting and call the tribal officers together, and that confederation resolved the conflict. It was called a confederation. Our forefathers, ironically enough, decided that confederation is a good idea. It's a loose confederation. It means that there's not a central authority. So when they constructed the Articles of Confederation, what they did, looking at the Iroquois, they said, well, how are we going to make this work? Well, we'll leave the militias in the states alone. The central government won't have any authority to call a military army together. It'll have to rely on the states to provide that. The states will have the power to have all of their own tariffs. The states will have a lot of separate power, in short. Now, what do you think happened as a result?
Okay,
Articles of Confederation, 1778 or whatever. What happened? They had 10 years. They didn't have chaos, but they had close to chaos. Big states trampled on the rights of the small states. The militias were at the borders and they raised tariffs. They wouldn't let them pass. The big states had the money for ships. Some of the small states didn't have a navy, obviously. There was an inequity of power. Such an inequity of power that there became a disillusion of the dream of a United States. I should go back to my notes now. I think I've skipped a lot here. Well, what happened? Our forefathers learned from these Iroquois and how to forge a confederation. I said that. Now, who are the people that did that? The Second Continental Congress, they wanted to separate from the British Empire, but before they did that, they had to have a Declaration of Independence. And I had to bring this up because it was important to understand why would this group of warriors of our forefathers, we are now warriors of our forefathers, but why would these forefathers of ours have to, first of all, have a common Declaration of Independence? Why was it important? What was the Declaration about? It was to declare to the English. They gave them kind of a single-finger salute in their own way because they were going to lose what if they got in the way of the British?
Their head.
Very good. And they did that for the Declaration of Independence in 1776 with the words at the end, and for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge what? To each other. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. In short, they're like the pig at breakfast, not the chicken. The pig at breakfast is all in. The chicken at breakfast can peck around and lay another egg. He's a confederation. But when we're talking about a Declaration of Independence with the British, which has the mightiest navy in the world, which has unlimited troops, and can pretty much circle any city it wants to, that's kind of a big deal. So let's analyze when the Declaration of Independence was done. What made it special? Well, let's see. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. That means when we have a society and it becomes necessary because we both believe in God, we both believe that our power and our rights come from God, not from man, not from state. But when it becomes necessary for me to tell you, the British, you know, it ain't working at all. You've taken our tariffs, you've taken our taxation, you are mistreating our children, you are mistreating our lands, you are not, in fact, any longer a good steward of our rights. And we gave, as far as we're concerned, from our perspective, we gave them to you. And now we're taking them back. And to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station in which the laws of nature and the nature's God. Do you understand? Our forefathers referred to natural law and nature's God. Do you understand? There is, when somebody says, why is this important? It's important because it is the nature of man. When we talk, we're talking about the nature of what we are. Respect for the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. The Declaration of Independence was the commentary that they are compelled to make to inform the British of why they're screwing up and we're leaving. It's like a divorce or more. We hold these truths to be self-evident. They didn't say, hey, they're not like, who's that? Charles Evan Hughes. I've never liked that guy. He was a constitutional scholar. He was a liberal. The Constitution is what judges say it is. Our forefathers never thought of writing a Constitution that was going to be interpreted by the judges and it would be what they say it is. That wasn't what they did. They were textualists. But they also had values and principles that were not subject to equivocation. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That means we all know what they are. That all men are what? Created equal. When they're using the term man, are they referring to just males? No. They're using it within the Greek context of a human being. Any human being are created equal. That they are endowed by whom? The Creator. With certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, women, children. They're essentially, when a child is in your society, he is accepting the rules and conditions in the law. And that's your duty as a parent to tell that child that. The child has a responsibility to understand that the law is equal for all, and that when some police officer suggests they stop doing what they're doing, they don't pull a gun and shoot them or ignore them. My dad had always one philosophy. You're smart enough to get in jail, you should be smart enough to get out. We never tested the philosophy, but I have no doubt that it would have been that. that to secure these rights, governments are instrumental in deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, is instantly destructive to these ends?
Yes.
It is the right of the people to alter. How do we alter?
Oh.
God, I hadn't thought of that. You're right. So we have a method to alter that. And that's called voting. In this election and in the next election and the next one. It also means you don't just vote for the top one on the ballot. You vote the down ballot. You guys will either vote the down ballot, suffer the consequence. Because Trump needs more people back in the State House and in the Senate and in our federal government. And if it doesn't happen, he is powerless to effectuate the changes and alter the things you wish to have altered. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. And let's pray that in 2020, November 3rd, we do just that. And organizing its powers in such a form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and their happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. I mean it. Light and transient causes. I mean causes that aren't legitimate. They're not truly sufficient to bear the action that we're taking. Now, the Declaration of Independence that we've just talked about, this is very important. The Declaration of Independence was what gave rise to the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation was what, Mr. McKinney? That's right. Our first Constitution. No, it was our first Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. When somebody says the Constitution, I'll say which one. The Articles of Confederation was our first attempt. And for 9 years, we tried to get around it. And what happened? Bullies are going to be bullies. There is a reason we have a strong electoral college. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an electoral college for one reason: to keep bullies like Goggins from beating up Mark. It is to prevent people like Doofus here It is to prevent people like Doofus from printing their own money for no reason, from using his militia without cause. The point is, the Constitution would have to come later. The Articles of Confederation was an attempt to embody that Declaration of Independence. Without the Declaration of Independence, no Articles of Confederation would have ever been made. Without the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution would not have been made. Without the Constitution, you wouldn't have a leg to stand on right now. We've been dismembered. With enough people like governing us right now, yes. Okay, so where's this going? I'm glad you asked. Because you're probably wondering, why would I waste all this time on this miscellaneous garbage? Because in 1781, when the Articles of Confederation were passed, about 6 years after the Declaration of Independence, what happened is that they had already made the decision to separate. And they did not anticipate that the Articles would be that weak. And when they reconvened, they had a constitutional convention. We, like Lauren Culp, are not willing to forget, marginalize, compromise, nor reject our past. All of us in this room understand the importance of our past. We recognize our future, for our grandkids and loved ones stand upon the planks of our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Without the Constitution and Bill of Rights, we don't have a future. We, like Jennifer Sefzik, can represent Van Werven and Doug Erickson, Matt Larken, Jeff Beeler, Ken Haslam, have all pledged each other and to God our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, especially when we run for office. Because we're committing time we don't have. We're committing time, money, energy, and we're placing our families in jeopardy. But this is not the end of the story. The Confederation, while it was not perfect, lasted for a few years, 10 years. It failed because the big colonies did bully the small colonies on tariffs and weapons and military might and so forth, and they would not protect the fledgling nation. Essentially, what the big colonies, Virginia and those other states did, New York, you know what they did? They told the central government to go dry ice. They didn't want it because they set it up in the Articles of Confederation that the only military the central government could have would be coming from the states. So the states said, well, if we don't believe in your cause, to heck with you. We're not gonna put a tariff on ourselves. We're not gonna use our military to slow us down. No. So our founding fathers had a decision. They had to try and convince Goggins and Doofus here. They had to convince them to reconvene another constitutional convention. They had to think it over. Hey, what are we going to do about this problem? We've got big states bullying big colonies bullying small colonies. What are we going to do? Well, what happened is that they realized that they had a choice. They could either put it together or allow the British monarchical powers, the German powers, all of the French powers, all of those nations were far stronger than the United States was. So what essentially became an essence of this conflict is the Federalists. The Federalists were Washington and Hamilton. They were the ones on the East Coast. The Federalist colonies, that was in the Northeast Coast, they had a bunch of agrarian colonies as well. Those agrarian colonies, agricultural colonies, wanted not to be outvoted and outgunned all the time. So they had a different agrarian outlook towards government than did the East Coast elites. Hamilton was kind of an elite, and so was Washington, whether you like it or not. But Washington got all of his money from Martha anyway, so I don't know. But essentially, they had a very large plantation. But Washington wasn't really interested in governance per se. He did not like being president, and he certainly wouldn't become monarch because he didn't like that. He would like that even less. So thank God, neither Washington and thank God Hamilton never assumed the presidency because he had never done it. So here we are. We are a fledgling nation. We have a failed governance system, a governance system that did not work. So they're going to sit down and try and straighten this out. And they do. They effectuate a constitution. Jefferson's revolution came a few years later, after they effectuated the Constitution of the United States. After George Washington's term was ended in 1800, Jefferson took over. Now, unlike Washington, Jefferson was a true scientist, agronomist, a brilliant man of agriculture. And Jefferson was a different type of individual. The people that supported Jefferson, are much like the people in this room. And I doubt that you've ever heard this, but I want to read you the last stanza of a poem about Jefferson and liberty. The last stanza of this poem says, "From Europe's wants and woes remote, a friendly waste of waves between, here plenty cheers the humblest cot and smiles on every village green. Let foes to freedom dread the name, but should they touch the sacred tree, twice 50,000 swords would flame for Jefferson and liberty." Jefferson looked at the tree of liberty as the sounding symbol, and his followers looked at it as the symbol of American freedom, United States freedom. He wanted to preserve that tree of freedom. His life was dedicated to it. Thomas Jefferson, the redhead, devoted his life to writing and thinking, and he did a marvelous job of both. And in Thomas Jefferson's first inaugural address, Thomas Jefferson stated to one and all, unlike most of our politicians today, I will compress my principles into the narrowest compass. They will bear stating the general principle, but not all its limitations. Now listen to these, and then tell me which ones are similar to Trump's today. Trump is not painting outside the box. He is painting the box as it ought to be painted. Trump is the first president, and I include Reagan, and I was Reagan's campaign chair for 2 terms. I was also Trump's first campaign chair in Larken County and Skagit County. In 2015, I accepted that. In 2015, I did support Trump. I'm very proud of it. Here's what Jefferson said we ought to stand for when we forged the new Constitution, because he helped write it. And he helped write his first inaugural speech, too. Here's what he said. He expects equal and exact justice to all men, of whatever state or persuasion, religious or political, peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. Does that sound like Trump? Does he want entangling alliances overseas with every country? I don't think so. The support of the state governments in all their rights as the most competent administrations for our domestic concerns and the surest bulwarks against anti-Republican tendencies. The states are our bulwark against anti-Republican tendencies. How has that worked out so far for Trump? Pretty good, except in which states? Democratic states tend not to listen too well, nor do they read. All right. The preservation of the general government in its whole constitutional vigor as the chief anchor of our peace at home and safety abroad. A jealous care of the right of election by the people. A mild and safe corrective of abuses which are locked by the sword of revolution, for peaceable remedies are unprovided. Absolute acquiescence in the decisions of the majority. Does Trump go along with the decision of the majority? No. Yes, he does. Where has he ever violated the decision of the majority in the Senate or the House or anything else? Where has he gone against the House of Representatives? Against it. He hasn't called it. He hasn't done it. He hasn't abused his power. He hasn't done any of that. He's scared them a lot, but that's their problem. A well-disciplined militia, our best reliance in peace and for the first moments of war. Isn't that what he says? We have the weapons. I don't want to use them. That's what Trump is saying now. Nothing has changed since 1800. It's 200 years. In 200 years, Jefferson's speech, inaugural speech, hasn't changed a bit. The honest payment of our debts and sacred preservation of the public faith, encouragement of agriculture and of commerce as its handmaid. Now, the only thing he didn't put in there was tech industry and AI, because I agree with all of you, if we don't get on top of AI, the Chinese are going to bury us. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of person under the protection of habeas corpus, and trials by juries impartially selected. The wisdom of our sages and blood of our heroes have been devoted to their attainment. They should be creed of our political faith, the text of civil instruction, the touchstone by which to try the services of those we trust. And should we wander from them in moments of error or alarm, let us hasten to retrace our steps to regain the road which alone leads to peace, liberty, and safety. Jefferson's first inaugural speech. He's asking the people to retrace their steps. I'm asking you to retrace yours. I'm asking all of you to begin thinking clearly and devoutly about what it is you wish to leave your kids. Jefferson was different with Washington very much in 1800 in this speech. The year, this is, as far as I'm concerned, 1800s when we crystallized the war between the Eastern elites and the flyover country. Now, I know that maybe you guys can't make that jump, but I think intellectually it's an honest jump. That Hamilton and Washington certainly weren't like Inslee, okay? I agree. But imagine Inslee being what he is. There's nothing we can do about that as a Democratic governor, except vote him out of office. That's the only thing we can. But my point is Washington and Hamilton had the same tendencies. Washington and Hamilton believed that the federal government should be the centralization of power, and that the minions, the agriculture people, just weren't that important. And that's an attitude Jefferson didn't share with Hamilton or Washington, which is why he ran against them and won. Now, Jefferson believed in crystallizing his conflict of red state versus blue state. Man must be free to regulate his own pursuits, free to allow those powers he deemed prudent, and always recognizing the first fundamental belief. All state power comes from the people who are endowed by God with that power. This is our conflict today, 220 years later. That should be 200. Today, 200 years later, politicians who were virtuous would pronounce their love of a more centralized government. The fact is we don't have honest governors that when they're Democrats and they take power, they're getting their shots called from the Democratic leadership. They don't have the courage to do what's in the best interest of their citizens, even though they may disagree with the Jeffersonians, which I consider myself, but they don't have the courage to say the Democratic House of Representatives in our current situation has gone way out of bounds. But most of the blue states are not governed by virtuous federalists. Remember what a federalist is? Washington and Hamilton believes in stronger central government. They're not virtuous federalists like Washington or Hamilton at all. They are governed by self-absorbed, ignorant, arrogant individuals who neither love this nation, its unique constitution, they don't love its brilliant forefathers, and are insightful forefathers. The problem is that brilliant writers such as Jefferson pointed this out, that there was going to be conflict, and he knew that. Monroe, Madison, they all clamored for the individual citizen to understand they are only rendering to the state certain political powers. They are not rendering to the state their natural rights. The Democratic governors clamor for chaos. Democratic governors such as Inslee clamor for chaos like some undiapered 5-year-old screaming from room to room, knowing not why they run. They are led by communists such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who still refuses to learn enough history or political science that for her to realize that she is an economic fascist. Economic fascist meaning she understands the state should control all means of central production and only that private industry is allowed, which enhances the state. Wishing to be armed by a state with the Nazi power she covets to inflict her totalitarian principles. Let's call it as it is. She admits she's a communist. Their manifesto is communist. There's no question that she admits that. That any U.S. citizen admires this affront to freedom and astonishes me and should appall you. We are warriors of our forefathers, and we will prevail in this election because we must, for our children, our grandchildren, and for the next 200 years. We must prevail so that your children and your grandchildren may continue this great nation as they become warriors for our forefathers. We must prevail in this election because reverting to a state of nature and a state of chaos, as our socialist enemies would desire, is not an option that we have available to us. We must prevail because our children, their children, the next 200 years depends on it. Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming. Did you enjoy yourselves?
Yeah.
Give yourselves a hand. Talk to your neighbors. Make a difference. You don't